Okay, we are kicking off our second webinar in this fall series of 2022. Tonight's topic is pastured poultry, value adding our farms through pastured poultry. AJ O'Neill will be the moderator here when he gets around to his computer. He got held up a little bit. We have Christian Ramsberg from Harmon Creek Farm and myself, Steve Montgomery from Lamppost Farm. Both Christian and I raise pasture poultry. It's a significant enterprise for us in our work, and so we have a little bit of experience marketing it and growing birds, and how that actually helps complement our enterprise package on our farms. You might be asking why this kind of a webinar is a part of the Red Devon USA community, and part of it is there's quite a few of us that do run Red Devons along with pasture poultry, and then also some people are kind of wondering if they should or what would be the options for them. There's also complementary nature to it in my mind. We have an on-farm store. I know Christian does too. It's not on-farm, but he has a brick and mortar store that people come to, packaging poultry products alongside of beef products. For both of us, I think is a home run. So you get to hear a little bit about that tonight. But let me start us off with a word of prayer, and then we can jump into our time together. Father, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this webinar tonight. Thank you for the chance to live the life that we live, for the freedoms that we have to make decisions about our vocation, and also to put together businesses that work. Thank you for the freedom and the opportunities we've been given to try things out and to see how they work. Thank you for this Red Devon community. Thank you for the fact that it's there's significant relationships within the community. And Lord, we just ask that you would allow tonight's webinar to feed the membership, but also as we come up to the show, an event here in Ohio in October, Lord, we just look forward to, and thank you for that opportunity, and look forward to being together with people that we call friends, and new people that are interested in cattle. Lord, give us the wisdom to be able to point to you and all the good things you have to offer through both grass-fed beef and Devon cattle and pasture poultry and agriculture in general. Thanks for creating it as a foundation for your creation. Lord, I also want to ask for your hand to be on AJ and his family as his mom is in the hospital. Just be with her, be with them, and bring her safely home and back to health. We praise you because you're a good God. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well,
amen. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that too.
Hey, there you are. You're welcome.
Hey, yeah, Steve, we'll go ahead and get started here. And Christian, but thank you guys both for being on this and be willing to be panelists and share some of your expertise in these areas. And hopefully you guys get a chance to learn too as well from each other tonight as we carry on this conversation and have discussion. Steve, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, just give us, I kind of wanted to go over terminology. For me, I only know the butchering side of how to take care of chickens, and I'm not too familiar with necessarily all the terminology. So I thought that'd be a good foundation for us to lay down, and we can kind of build from there then.
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, sure, AJ. Thanks. So there's a lot to go kind of dive into. On the poultry side, you can have broilers, which are the meat chickens, layers, which are the egg chickens. Egg chickens can eventually become meat chickens, which are considered stewing hens. Those are good for people to make stock with, soup. You sell those as 2-3-year-olds once they're processed. You also have ducks as part of the poultry. We raise turkeys here, so we do turkeys for Thanksgiving. which I have some pictures of those that I can share. Young turkeys are called poults. Young chickens, young broilers, or chicks. We get ours in the mail from our hatchery. Some people actually buy the eggs and incubate them. I think that cost wise, it's a wash. And actually, I think if you add labor in, it would be way better to just go ahead and order in mass like we do, 500 at a time for our flocks of broilers. Yeah, a couple other things about laying chickens is you can get chicks day old from the hatchery. You can incubate them yourself if you get fertilized eggs. But we also buy the way we do it is we get ready to lay hens. So those come at about 17 weeks old. They weigh just under 3 pounds a piece. And then we put them on a feed ration that will kind of grow them just a little bit more and then kickstart them into laying eggs. And so the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks of that flock, we get pullet eggs, which are small, real tiny eggs, but then they mature and the industrial breed that we raise as far as the laying hens are golden comets or red sex links. Those lay approximately 300 eggs a year. So we're getting about an egg a day out of most of them. And that's been really good too. There's coops, there's pasture pens. We can go all over all of that stuff. What other terminology things would you add, Christian or AJ? Do you want us to jump on?
I don't have anything to add unless AJ has something.
I guess maybe from there we could talk a little bit about some of the different breeds and why you guys possibly picked what you did, breed of chickens you did.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of crossover, isn't there, Steve? Because didn't we buy our layers from the same place as you did?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then our chickens, the crosses would be the same. Yeah. Yeah, my mom was there for that. So we would have the same. I think we're due to retire that flock this late fall or winter. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to get to it, but then I'm assuming we use the same Cornish cross broilers. What hatchery are you using right now?
We've been using Eagle Nest Poultry.
Okay, yeah, I think that's who we're back to this year too.
It's either them or Meyer Poultry in near Johnstown, Myersdale, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think we're totally Eagle's Nest this year. Who did we use last year? Right? We've used all of them at some point, and like we had a bad year last year as far as losses, and then we got one batch where I guess the eggs were out of pullets, and they almost all died in like the first week. I can't even remember where those came from. All the names kind of meshed together at some point, just because we've used probably 5 of them now. But we've done pretty good this year. I just took a batch in last night. That's why I couldn't do it last night, because I was dropping those off.
We've used Eagle Nest for a long time, and I like them. So AJ just showed up as an attendee, so I tried to get him to join us as a panelist. That way he has video. Here we go. Eagle Nest is good. The one challenge we're running into is having, shipping issues. And so, especially trying to get chicks in the middle of the summer, we were losing, you talk about if you 500 or 600 turkeys, and if you lose 200 in shipping because of heat, 90, we get them in mid-July. So,
and the issues with FedEx and UPS or USPS right now, that's what we started picking them up this year before we had, because I think Eagle's Nest is the one kind of in central Ohio, right? So like my mom makes the trip, so I think it's like maybe an hour and 40 minutes both ways. So like we just kind of try to eliminate the risk in that, and we're picking them up this year, and like it's been fine. Like our losses have been way better because even before shipping got bad, like we were out of a batch of 1,000, like we'd probably have, I don't know, 25 to 40 dead ones, and then like you obviously you lose a handful more each day going forward up until a certain time. But like you're probably still talking 100 plus birds. So like I think we've cut that at least in half just by picking them up, which I guess like luckily my mom can swing it to get out there, and so it's not always plausible to spend a whole day doing that, but it's worked out okay this year.
So you're saying your loss rate is about 10%, 100 out of 1,000?
When we were having them shipped.
Huh.
And I think normally, like if we would buy 1,000, they usually send 50 extras, but like, and I could be a little bit off on those numbers, but overall in the first, let's just say 3 weeks, it's probably 100, give or take, just from the first ones that show up dead in the box to the ones that, don't get the adequate water in the beginning, and like the ones you find dead under the brooders. It's probably something like that. I don't know, give or take.
Sure.
Don't quote me on that though.
No, we've been all over the board on that, and it's amazing, a loss rate and how that affects your bottom line. It's
right.
If you lose 20%, you're losing 200 out of 1,000.
Yeah. I think sometimes when we've had like a really bad one where we lose a bunch, like in that first day or two, they would reimburse us, or because I think it might have been in those bad batches we got last year where we might lose 100 in the first 2 days or something. And obviously something isn't right when we've raised, 24 other batches that were fine. So they would send us replacements, and then it became an issue because we'd get those replacements like 5 or 6 days later, and they're at a different stage than all the other ones. So that was a major pain. It's been a lot better this year. I think our loss rate is better. Just they're better birds, but then picking them up has helped. So like let's just say worst case scenario, we lost 100 out of those 1,000 plus birds. Like we're probably at 20 to 25 now, maybe, give or take, just because you don't show up with the dead birds. Like you might have like 2 or 3 dead birds in the box when you get back.
That's great, man. I'm envious. We're working that direction.
Well, yeah, those chickens, they're not the hardiest thing, so it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes when you open them up, and they're either like vigorous or it's like, oh boy, it doesn't look good.
Right.
Is there a breed selection then, or am I overthinking that? It's not like cattle where there's breed, or they just you don't have many options. You just take what they're willing to give you.
Well, I think each hatchery has, like, they're pretty much all for this basic, like the Cornish cross chicken. There's different breeding like strains, or like it's like a bloodline almost. But usually that's something that the big like industrial chicken farms probably deal with more. I think for the most part, when we call to order Cornish crosses, I don't know what bloodline they are. Like, that's not really the right terminology, but there's a name for these genetics, and I'm not even sure what they are. We don't have as much choice in that as like a Case Farms would. So we kind of, whatever they're selling that year is what we get. And I think they even vary it from year to year, because if they have a couple bad years with a specific strain of Cornish crosses, they might go to a different strain the next year. So like you see a lot of variation in my experience from year to year. It's like they don't all just grow the same. They don't look exactly the same. The rates are kind of all over the place. But I think that's something that we've experienced just as being small producers and in dealing with these hatcheries that are somewhat small scale.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Well, there are a few different strains. Like there's the Ross 303, I think, and there's a Ross 501. And really the difference is the shape of the breast. Sometimes they can be a little more pointy like this, or sometimes they're a little round. Sometimes they're more squatty, and sometimes they're a little more elongated. And then, as Christian was saying, it's really just a hatchery thing. We found that we like the strain that Eagle Nest Poultry gives us. it's really presentable in the package. We can finish a consistent 5-pound carcass on a chicken in 8 weeks. And that's, we like that. The other variabilities there have to do with just their bone structure, meaning, do you have more leg issues if you grow bigger breasts versus more moderate sized carcasses and that kind of stuff. The other possibility is to go into like Freedom Rangers, or the Red Bros is another one. These are some heritage type broilers, meat chickens. Those will grow at a slower pace, probably 12, 13 weeks to finish rather than 8 or 9 like we do. Those will be a little less meaty. The carcass isn't quite as rotund and presentable. It really depends on the market that you're trying to sell into, I think. And we were selling to a lot of restaurants when we first started, and that's what we started selling to our customers off farm here too. So there's no reason for us to change. And then that 12 weeks is a significant investment when you can do it at 8 weeks for what we have. It's kind of a, we're shooting to the middle of that group of people that we're trying to hit. And I think the 12-week bird would cost more. It may taste a little different. Some people say it tastes a lot better. Have you ever raised like Freedom Rangers, Christian?
No, I could never figure out the benefit, because like all your points are right. Like the total time, they look different. I think they look terrible in a package. Plus, I don't think they yield as well. So like I see no advantage other than it's maybe a more natural looking bird, as like obviously a Cornish cross is not a pretty specimen, but you can't lie with the carcass quality, and then I guess feed efficiency too. I could never pencil it in. I understand why some people do it, but just with what feed costs, and you're in Ohio, we're kind of we have limited growing season anyway, so we got to pump as many batches out as we can. If we're kind of wasting another 3 to 4 weeks per batch, like it's really going to limit our numbers. So long answer, no, I've never I've never grown them.
Yeah, some people like them for the heritage side. The idea that you're growing something that isn't like hybridized crazy. Especially, we're dealing with some of the best cattle that aren't hybridized at all. And we value that in the Devons. At the same time, like when it comes to chickens, we're adding health by raising them on pasture. Our feed is non-GMO, so we're doing really high quality feed into these birds. If you were to test the carcasses and the fat ratios and the acids in there, they're incredibly healthy for people. And that's the value that we're trying to sell and market through raising these chickens the way we do.
Well, you're touching on some of the feed stuff. Is there like a therapeutic antibiotic that might be in it, like in the beginning? Do you want to touch on that at all, or?
We don't have any of that. We mix our own
Okay.
feed here, and actually, I don't even change my ration. Our feed ration for poultry for broilers is the same on day 1 as it is at the end of 8 weeks. So, do you change your ration up, Christian, or what do you do there?
I've done it less and less as time goes on, because our mill isn't overly local to the farm, so I have to haul it. So it became a real hassle when I was hauling layer feed, various broiler feeds, pig feed. So I started consolidating it. So right now I try to keep them on something between they probably average an 18% ration, but sometimes they get a 16%, just if they end up getting some of our layer feed, or if we have young pigs. I kind of, so it's somewhere between 16 and 18. I've weaned a little bit off more. I sometimes if I can time it right, I'll get them some starters, some 20 to 22, something a little bit higher. But usually on, I think what we consider the grower feed, I think that's usually 18%. So I found if I can keep them in that range, it's pretty good. we've had better luck this year. Last year I kept them on finisher, like a finisher ration, which is probably a little bit less. It's probably more like 16, 17. I don't think it gets up to 18, but like we weren't having the yield like we were this year. So 90% of the time they're probably an 18. Maybe in the beginning they get 20 plus for a couple weeks, but it's just there's too many different feeds that we're feeding. So I've tried to kind of keep them somewhat the same.
Kind of I guess there's a couple of different directions I think about going there. So as far as the feed goes, your layers are requiring more nutrition than what your broilers would be.
No, it's the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Our layer feed is 16% protein, maybe 15. It's, corn, roasted soybeans. There's some oats in there, and then a lot of calcium in the form of aragonite.
Yeah, I think the only difference between just normal feed and layer feed is the added calcium. Is that right?
There's a lot more soybean protein in our broiler ration. I think the
Okay.
there's 600 pounds per ton in our, maybe 6.25 pounds per ton in our broiler ration, whereas there's 400 pounds in a layer ration. And then the mineral pack, it's a poultry NutriBalancer we get from Fertrell. It's organic. One thing I do want to say is, I don't know if you are concerned about this, Christian, or pay attention to it, but we had our feed mixed by a local guy for a while, and he was doing roasted soybeans, and the quality, I think that the difference between roasted soybeans and soybean meal in a feed ration, I think, is significant just in flavor. The quality of, like, kind of the nuttiness in the chicken comes out in the roasted soybeans. It's the same thing.
What's the cost difference?
It's hard to know because I've never done, we mix it here now. So I buy soybeans, non-GMO beans from a local Mennonite farmer here. And then I have a guy come in and roast them here on the farm. So I've never done soybean.
Okay.
But I really like the roasted soybeans, and I like the flavor, that profile that comes out. And then with our turkeys, we actually feed straight wheat from right about now, about halfway through their growing season or growing time. We start giving them feeders full of just wheat kernels, whole wheat, and they'll go in and they start eating. By the end, they're eating 50% wheat and 50% of feed ration, and that adds a real flavor profile to the turkey too, which makes it pretty cool. We're getting great reviews on our flavor stuff.
Yeah, we don't mix our own. I'd be more prone to playing around with that if I was the one actually at the mill. I don't know what my feed guy would say if I don't know if they do roasting. I have no idea. I've never been asked, so I guess maybe it'd be an interesting question to ask him.
It's like a giant popcorn popper. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I've seen them. I can't picture one at the mill though, so they might just laugh at me.
So you did kind of touch a little bit on the difference of taste between some of the feeds, Steve. But how about if we kind of rewind that back to, a grass-fed free range versus what you're buying commercially in the store? You get a lot of good reviews as far as customers noticing flavor differences.
You can handle that one, Christian. I absolutely on my end, but go ahead.
Yeah, like we definitely get people saying that. I don't know. Like sometimes I have to question. Like I think if you cook one like our breast compared to a store-bought breast, like there's no doubt a difference in the feel of it and the look and probably the taste. I think when some people tell me, I don't know if it's more of a placebo or just the idea, because like once it's actually in something, I'm not sure. But if it's just just regular cooked chicken, for sure there's a difference. And there's a good chance. Like I think a lot of people would say something like, if they're a little bit older, they'll say something like, oh, it tastes like the chicken my grandparents made, or if something growing up, it tastes like something they haven't had in a while. But then, not like, we've never got any poor output, but like input, but I don't know if some people would kind of the same lines as grass-fed beef, where it might not be totally their what they're used to, so it may or may not be a good or bad thing. Overall, like, everything we've heard is good. Like, good being better, I don't know if you can say it's better or not. I think that's just to each person, whether or not they think it tastes better is kind of up to them. Like, I prefer it, but obviously I'm biased, so that's
Oh,
that.
I appreciate that. That kind of led me to another question about preparing it. Do you have recommendations for your customers on, like, you're going to get more flavor if you're pan frying this versus grilling it versus, I'm a doubt most people probably aren't deep frying it, but just do you ever have recommendations as far as that, like what kind of oil or butter or anything like that?
Like, we keep it's like a file folder of like recipes at our store, that like, if people are kind of come in, because a lot of times people do come in and they don't have like a specific thing in mind that they're going to cook with it. They're just like, oh, that looks good. Obviously, like, something like a breast is easy, but like, maybe if they see whole chickens, they're like, well, like, what do I do with a whole chicken? And at that point, we can be like, oh, here's 10 things that are good that we've done. And so normally, like, we would cook these recipes, and then if we think they're good and worthwhile as far as telling other people about them, we put them in this folder, and then we hand them out in that way. But pretty much like any cut, like, we could tell you something to do with, because everybody knows breasts, everybody knows wings, but with a chicken, you're getting a bunch of things you don't think about, like thighs. Like, most people like thighs, but like drumsticks can be a hard sell sometimes. Some people just don't know about them. A lot of people don't know how to cut up chickens, so like, we either do like a whole chicken uncut up, and they can take and do what they want, or we also sell whole chickens cut up, like they're already cut up in the tray. So yeah, like, we try to at least give people pointers as far as what to do with what cut, if they don't know. But sometimes they come in because they know exactly what they're trying to cook, and they already have a recipe, and we just point them in the right direction.
Can I share something here? I'll do a share screen.
Yeah, please.
Let me see. Come on. Uh-oh. I have to do something to allow the apps below to record the contents of your screen. I don't know what's going to happen there and why. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's not letting me do that. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to screen share. I don't think I am. Oh, that's a bummer. Try that one more time.
Hey, Christian, along those lines, do you ever sell like a value-added chicken, like a marinated chicken, or pre-cooked, or anything like that?
I'm trying to think. Nothing as far as what you just listed. I don't think so. We've done smoked turkey. I don't think we've done smoked chicken. Yeah, no, like, other than that broth I sent you, that's something we do with, obviously, like, if you get whole chickens cut up, you're gonna have all those carcasses left. And I think, well, I think Steve's the one who told me about that broth place that we use. And that's been a pretty good seller for us. So that's a good thing to do with. Otherwise, you have hundreds of boxes of chicken carcasses that you got to put somewhere, and people buy them every once in a while, but they're pretty slow sell. So that would be the only thing we take at this point, and get it kind of processed, and then get another product back.
Yeah, I always found that very interesting. And then also that you're able to market the feet and how many pieces of the chicken you're actually able to market.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't know if Steve has the same experience with getting feedback, but like we would take all the like we sell feet like crazy. The issue is half the time the USDA inspector doesn't approve of them or whatever. I think he just does them in a big batch. Like he just decides that like he's not going to approve any of the feet that are hanging up anywhere. And so out of a batch of 1,000, like we're usually lucky if we get a few bags, and it's not because our chicken had bad feet. It's just because the inspector didn't feel like looking at 1,000 feet that day.
Yeah.
I've never had that happen. That's crazy.
What? You get all your feedback
every time? Yeah, all of them.
Oh no, yeah, I don't know, like the last couple of batches, I haven't totally paid attention to what we've been getting back. I know in years past that's been an issue, and like we can never get like a good answer. It's just I don't know. Like I'm assuming it's the same inspector.
Yeah, we use the same processor.
Right. Yeah, I know. Like we're probably on different days, but it's probably still the same guy.
Huh. Yeah, I would be upset because we sell feet like crazy. I mean, just like you said.
Right.
Here, this is that's a smoked turkey, or I'm sorry, smoked chicken that we sell, and that's at Susie at Baltic Meats. And man, it's outstanding. It is so good. We do the celery cure, which for the record, I don't know that it makes that big of a difference. As far
Is
as
that a whole chicken?
That's a whole chicken, 5.43 pounds.
Oh,
We sell that for, I think right now it's $8.50 a pound. Maybe it's $8 a pound. And it's not cheap.
yeah.
Chicken's near $50.
Huh.
But man, it is so good. And one of the things that we tell people is, there's multiple meals in that. It's just, and first of all, it's pre-cooked already. So thaw it out and then and start eating it if you want, or heat it up. And then don't hesitate to make a broth. I mean, definitely make a broth out of it. It value adds that product for people. What else was I wanted to show you? I can't open it though, it's not letting me, but we put together a YouTube video about parting whole chickens. It's if you Google Lamppost Farm parting chicken YouTube, or go to YouTube and then look it up like that. I did a whole series about the cost breakdowns of birds and why we encourage people to come and process chickens here on the farm with us and then part their own. It's so much of a value add to do it that way. So here's some of the products. There's spies. This is the broth that Christian was talking about right here. We get it done, both of us, at Erie Bone Broth up in Cleveland. And it's exactly right. You take those chicken backs that fill up freezer space and turn them into a 22-ounce package of great stuff that people pay $8.50 a piece for. Really,
Steve, that has some vegetables added too, from what I see there.
Yeah, they add organic vegetables in the process, and spices. That company's a new company. It's been around now for 3 or 4 years, but they're growing like weeds and doing really well. We also do sausages. These are 5 different. These are hot Italian and mild Italian at the top, and then the Wisconsin brand bratwurst, which is basically salt, pepper, sage, and nutmeg, and then fresh chicken kielbasa, which is salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and then just maple flavored chicken sauce, like a breakfast link chicken sausage. The bottom 3 are our top sellers when it comes to sausages, but all 5 are fantastic. Do you do these 2, Christian?
Yeah, we do those. I was just trying to, I'm on my phone, so it's I think we do all those. I think we got rid of the Wisconsin for something else. Like we have about the same amount. I'm trying to, because yeah, we do the hot Italian, the sweet Italian. We do the kielbasa. I'm blanking on what the other ones are, but I think we have 1 or 2 other ones.
They do a Cajun.
I think we tried all. I don't think we've ordered that one. we've tried it. Yeah, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but similar. Like we do most of the same stuff.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do batches, what would it be? Would it be like a 25-pound minimum for something like that?
If we have our processor make up a batch of sausages, yeah, it's 25 pounds.
Okay. So they're, I mean, just kind of going off that, I know like Cognac and Excalibur and some of them have other seasonings, like they have like a maple blueberry, and we actually have like blueberries you can put in it. And I mean, so the sky's the limit. I don't know if they would be willing to do that, because then they'd probably have to change their, instructions and stuff. But it is interesting to see how many different sausage flavors are out there. But I like them ones you had incorporated there. That's a good base.
Well, I know they probably have, what, Steve, like a dozen other ones, because I know they even have like a blueberry whatever. Like we in the beginning, we like had them send us like one pack of every one they have, and it's quite like, I think it's well over a dozen. So like I think we tried to narrow it down like Steve. So like pick the best 5 or 6, and that's what you sell. Like there is other ones, better options, but as far as what you're carrying in inventory, you do have to limit it somewhat.
Yeah, for sure. You only have so much places to display what you're
Right.
to the consumer. So kind of another interesting thing that we do at the store is we call it a chicken steak. We also do it in like chicken patties, but what we'll do is take, it's half thighs and half white meat, whether it be the breast. It's usually not the breast, but the tenders, and then we would grind them through one time, and it's just the salt and breadcrumbs, Italian breadcrumbs. And we'll portion them out in 6 ounces, and then we'll run it through a meat cuber, and then it makes it kind of like a longer, like chicken style, like for on a hoagie sandwich.
No,
So that was
yeah,
one thing we've done. And then we've also done where we put them in like a 3-inch casing, like a tube, something like that, and run it in like a 10-pound tube, and then we'll cut them inch thick, so then they like have a nice thick patty. But so then we'll have chicken patties available as well. But yeah, I really like all this. That's you guys are doing well marketing that stuff. I enjoy seeing that. I don't know where to go as far as what's going to flow here, because I had lots of other questions. I don't know if I start all over again and say, okay, I'm getting ready to start doing chickens. How do I begin? Do you have to order your chickens for the year? Do you just have to order them like a couple months ahead of time? Like, I don't know what your hatchery requires of you guys.
The first thing I would say is make sure you get your butcher dates and then work back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you should be scheduling those right now.
Right. Processing is the biggest bottleneck at this point. Thankfully, our processors, small scale, but also values farmers, Christian and our sizes, so he makes sure to accommodate us and take care of us.
Yeah, he gives us like priority on dates. Like I'm assuming you too, Steve, as far as scheduling us before he schedules the people bringing in 50 chickens or something. Right. Because he can piece those guys in wherever. But for us, like we almost need like that day dedicated to ours. And then I don't know what their capacity is at this point, but it might be like 2 or 3 other people also bring their chickens in that day. But like we're the cornerstone of their work day. So yeah, they're good about that. They're probably, as far as working with processors, they're, I think, the best in that regard, and for my experience with processors. But like I think in the next week or 2 we're making the dates for next year.
Right. Yeah. So I'd say book your dates first, then get your hatchery lined up. Give yourself between 8 and 9 weeks. That way it depends on the sizes you're looking for. I have a friend that sells most exclusively to restaurants, and his size of birds are 3.5 to 4 pounds. Because most chefs don't want to deal with a huge portion, but that's not us. Our market here is we want 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of breast per chicken. And we want, carcasses, full birds that are 5 to 6 pounds. So for me, that's 8.5 weeks. And so you just kind of schedule your year out based on your dates, and then plan on 2 to 3 weeks in the brooder, actually 3 to 4. Let me show you another. See if I can pull
The
this up.
videos don't work on Zoom, Steve.
What's that?
Videos don't work on Zoom. We'd struggled with that before.
Oh, yeah. I had Facebook pictures open that I wanted to show you pictures of, but I don't think I can get in there. Yeah, I can't do that. Okay, so I'll have to, well, I have a picture of our brooder. So you want them to be in your brooder for 3 weeks minimum. Is that what you run, Christian?
Yeah, it kind of depends. Like this, because we don't have a setup like you. I can't brood two batches. I can't have 2 batches in brooder at the same time. So like this last, the batch that I took in last night was an older, it was our 9-week batch. Like normally we do 8. This one we did a little bit longer. So I think we had to keep our next batch, which will be our last batch for the year, in the brooder, like maybe 5 days longer than normal. So we're kind of pushing in that regards. But yeah, it's 3 weeks ish, give or take. But it more so depends when we get the other ones off the field. Like we're a little bit hamstringed in that regard.
Oh. Yeah, so we run them basically for the first week. They need 1/4 of a square foot per bird. So if you're going to do 500 birds in a flock, or let's say 100, then you need 25 square feet of your brooder space for the first week. And then for weeks 2 and 3, they need 1/2 a square foot per bird. So you want to bump that up, or start with 50 square feet and then just go from there. And it can't be drafty. It's got to be warm. Like we used to use heat lamps, and there's something on the internet called Ohio Brooder. It's like an insulated box with a heat lamp in it that the birds can come in and out of. And that worked really well for us. We switched to a propane brooder now. So instead of using electricity, we're using propane. We did that just about the time COVID hit and all the propane prices went through the roof. So I'm not sure at this point what's better. I think both of them would be pretty expensive. But yeah, and then not drafty, something that will protect them from predators. I mean, we've had cats and rats and raccoons, and we had a wild cat come into the barn one time, and I went into the brooder and it came flying out. Like we had it covered with screen, and I went to look in and the thing jumped right out like through the screen and nearly climbed my chest and up over my shoulder. And it was, you deal with all kind of different stuff that way. And then we put ours out on pasture at the end of week 3, and they're out there for the rest of the time.
That's probably a pretty good segue into infrastructure. I'm going to share my screen here quick and show Christian's chicken trucks. Are you able to see that?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So there's Christian. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Christian?
Yeah, so that's what we've been using pretty much the whole time. And they've worked pretty well for us. They're 8 by 12, I believe. And I think the sweet spot is probably no more than 75, 80 birds per tractor. And when we've added more, we do have some issues with competition and feeding, and they scratch themselves and whatnot. So we try to really stay. I'd love to do less, but like I think we're running, I'm trying to think, 13 or 14 of those things now. And at that point they span however many 13 or 14 is times 8. Like they span a big part of our field. So like we can't get too much wider. We run into some issues with that. So around 75 birds a piece. Sometimes we have to run 80 just because maybe more birds survive from delivery through the brooder. It just happens to be that way. And those are obviously, like, they're pre-manufactured, so like we buy them from a place that makes them, and then we just have to assemble them once we get them. They weren't overly cheap, and we've bought different, like we bought our first one 6 years ago or so now, and well, I think we bought a few back then, and we've rebought several more over the next couple of years, and I'm sure they've gone up in price, because I think originally they might have been like maybe like $700-800 a piece. I'm sure they're higher than that now, but they've had pretty good longevity. The tarps, I think we've only had to replace one tarp, and that's because the wind like ripped it off one time and it got ripped up. But other than that, like most of those tarps are original. And then usually it's a matter of if anything needs replaced, everything's pretty cheap. They're probably the biggest downfall to any pasture poultry is the labor involved in it. So it's not the quickest thing in the world pulling 13 of those. And our, like, we have a decent labor situation that, like, I really don't even do much of this at this point. We have a crew in the summer of a few high school kids, and then my farmhand that handles most of it. But it probably takes, to pull all those 13 or 14 tractors, feed and water, you're probably looking at an hour and a half or so of time, give or take, depending on how quick people are working that day. So I'd love to use something more like what Steve has, but our ground isn't very level. So like even with these tractors, we deal with, like, when you pull them across to a new section, if there's any kind of like dip in the ground, you're gonna have this opening that the bar just sits on top of. So, and then you have to find something to fill that. Otherwise, it turns into raccoon heaven at night. So that's pretty much the only reason we haven't moved from these smaller pens, is that those bigger pens, like you need pretty flat ground for.
Hey,
But otherwise, they're pretty solid. I think they're good for, like, if they're 800 plus now, I think like you can make that two batches or something.
yeah. So Christian, is that on the picture we're looking at the front, is that a T-bar hanging down that you pull up and that drops?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like you pull that bar up and then it lifts. It has these cables that lift two tires in the back, and they do drag pretty easily. At this point, we hook like a tether up to our UTV and just pull them. So we're not really pulling those manually, but they're relatively well designed in that, like, if you are pulling them manually, that's not that hard. Probably the biggest thing is when they're really young and you pull and it lifts it up, like the chicks, like you need somebody in the back to kind of shoo the little chicks forward, otherwise they'll just go right under it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about these troughs and their water system?
Yeah, so like those troughs they're turkey feeders. When you buy them, that's like what they're called. And this picture doesn't show it, but we also, I think we used 2 for each pen. I think we're still using 2 of these long ones you see. And then I also have, I think 1 or 2, I'm blanking on our current setup, but just regular like 35-pound, the round feeders, because with 2 of these turkey feeders with 75-ish birds, at a certain point there would be, we were getting issues with them scratching each other in the back, like jumping on each other, trying to get at the feed. So by adding another feeder or 2, we've limited the competition a little bit more. So it's gotten better. That took us a year or 2 to figure out what was going on with that. And then those hanging feeders are just regular Poisson poultry drinkers. I forget exactly what they're called, but it doesn't show it in that angle. So on the other side of the tractor from that T-bar, there's 2 5-gallon buckets sitting on the back on just a wood platform, and they just gravity feed into. Yeah, I don't know if any of these.
I did see it on this.
Yeah,
this one.
Yeah, it's like those were just like some stock. Yeah, you can kind of see them. So they just have it's like, I don't know, 5/16" tubing that runs out of the bucket and gravity feeds into those waterers. and they've been pretty good. Like every once in a while they'll clog up, but you just kind of unscrew them, blow them out, and then they're back in business. So like we've had pretty good luck with those, and that's mostly what like, we've used a couple of different brands, but the Plaisance is what we've always went back to.
Steve, do you want to show us that one you have of your turkeys? Because I was curious, like how much water that. I mean, do they only need 5 gallons of water a day?
Yeah, when it's hot out, they go like I don't know, like we do 2 5-gallon buckets on each one of those, and I don't think we need 5 or 2 of them, but if it's 95 degrees out and those birds are 7.5 weeks old, and you only have 1 bucket, you'd probably definitely be refilling it. So that's why I just went to 2, just to make sure there's more.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I really like about your system, Christian, is you could split that and put them in different fields.
Yeah, like we end up doing it in like 3 different, so like we'll do 2 runs on this one part of the field because it's wide enough that we can just like move them over, and then like, you know, we cover that area pretty good, and then we do the last 2 runs, like we move them like through a gate into another pasture, and a lot of it depends on water, and then so like we need our piped water to get there, but then also I need to be able to pull my gooseneck trailer somewhat close to it, and wherever we finish that runoff, it needs to be level enough that I can lift up pallets with the skid steer and put it on. So like that's kind of how we decided where we were going to run them, but they are pretty portable. Like you could split them off into different groups. Like we run them all together, but if you wanted to do 4 different groups, you could. It just, you got to make sure you have water ran everywhere, and then you have to figure out a way to round them all up at the end.
Right. What I think the benefit is for people that might be interested watching this is you can add fertility to your pastures wherever you're grazing, as long as, I mean, it's relatively flat, and you can move those pens because of your portability, man. That gives you such flexibility. It's awesome. Like we have some fields that I wish I could get our coops in. So what you're looking at here is this is a 36-foot long by 20 feet wide. They call them mobile range coops, MRCs or prairie schooners is another way. Basically, it's a greenhouse on skids with roll-up sides, and then we put chicken wire around the outside here just as a reinforcement, plus that keeps them in during the day. We pull this ahead every day 36 feet with our tractor. And then in one field, we don't have pressurized water, so we run the 2 totes full of water on this trailer and move it ahead every day. So that's portable too. We can kind of move all over, but the limiting factors for us is it's 20 feet wide, and I only have a handful of gates I can get it through to go into other fields, you know? And so I'd love to be able to graze turkeys and chickens just to spread the fertility around. Let me see if I can get to the last picture in this right here. So this is where they were. Well, you can see right here is where they were yesterday. This was moved this morning. So, and then the day before they were here, and then the day before they were there, and then before that. And before you know it, the grass is coming back and the fertility is kicking in. And what's really cool is to see it next spring, and you'll be able to almost tell where these pens were by the depth of the grass in that space. The quality of manure distribution and fertility that we're adding, because they're not here more than a day or two, they're not, that nitrogen in the chicken manure or turkey manure is not burning out the field. So we're able to have them poop and move off of it, and then the sun, does its job and cooks it and uses it positively rather than a negative. And so we're adding huge amounts of fertilization to our fields. So with your system, Christian, I mean, look at the grasses in your field. That looked amazing. But the benefit for somebody else is, let's say they only have 2 acres or 4 acres or whatever, and they put one of those pens in it. You can move it all over that, and before you know it, you're having huge distribution of manure and fertilization that's happening.
Yeah, theoretically, like if you have the time and the flexibility and the ability to gather the chickens at the end, like the more square footage you can cover, the better. Like we probably end up only covering maybe, I'd have to measure, but it might add up to be like 5 acres of ground that we actually cover throughout the season. Just because most of our batches are kind of going side by side. So like it would be nice if we could do that all over the place. It's just not as feasible just with our terrain.
Yeah. So we use these hanging feeders. These are Kuhl feeders, Kuhl. I think these are really nice because they hold 35 pounds. So we use 7-gallon buckets when we feed. We take, I should have taken a picture of this. But in a webinar back in the spring, we talked about different ideas, and we've converted these totes into feed bins. So I can put 1,000 pounds of broiler feed in here right out of the feed mixer. And then it has a chute on the opposite side, not this one, but a different one. And we haul that down with the tractor and then feed out of it in 7-gallon buckets. And one 7-gallon bucket will fill up 35 pounds. So, we have, I think there's 6, 4, 10. I think there's 11 feeders. There's 1 or 2 over here, maybe 12. And we fill that up, and then the lips on here, they don't allow feed to be scratched out. Like it kind of, when a chicken or a turkey eats, they grab it and pull, and it usually would hit that. If the edge wasn't on here, you'd see all kind of spillage. But these are really good and keep things fairly contained. And then it's the same watering system that Christian has with the Poissons. And one thing about that is, if you're interested in getting into this, comb Craigslist and Marketplace and just keep searching, because you'll find these things come up for sale, and you can get really good ones for used prices. And then just do a gravity feed like Christian was doing with the 5-gallon buckets. I mean, we did that for the longest time. This is gravity feed to this pipeline, and then each one's tapped into here. So it doesn't have to be much. And these are so nice. You can adjust them and just do a little bit of flow. And they're fantastic. They'll shut off automatically for you. There's 400 turkeys in this one pen. Now that's, in my opinion, they should be split. I mean, yesterday. So we're getting to that. And space is a concern, and that's what Christian was saying about 75, 80 birds in that one pen is for broilers. And the more you get, the more stressed they are. And stress is always a factor in growth. And so that's what we're trying to do there. Let's see if there's anything else to show you.
Along the stress lines, will you see that? Have you seen that in a batch, say that they were too tight to show up in the meat?
You don't see it necessarily in meat quality. You just see it in carcass weights are less, significantly less. We used to run 8x12 pens. They were made out of wood, and I could put 65 in there. And we did a test flock where we did 75, 65, and 50. And we butchered them all at the same time and weighed the flocks. And the 50 and 65 were almost identical. You couldn't tell them apart. And 75 for us, they dropped off significantly. Like we were losing a ½ pound or a pound per bird on average out of that pen. And it just was what Christian said, as far as feeder space and competition at the feeder, it just wasn't good.
Yeah, that's why we've had to buy more, because we were running 10 and then 12 total. And then I think that's why we might be up to 14 now, which I think at the most we've been running 75, but like that's I don't want to put any more in than that. Like I'd love to, I don't think we have the space, like unless we totally downsize to go down to like 65, but 70, 75, we've done okay with that. I'm sure it'd be better if we only had 50 in there. But then, we'd have to buy another 4. Again, at that point it becomes like I don't know if the investment would be worth that half a pound or not, like to if we're not going to do it, because we're pretty much limited to 1,000 birds total each batch, just with our brooder space. That's I couldn't imagine brooding any more than that in what we have. Because it's like at 3 weeks, it's like we gotta get them out of there. So yeah, I definitely agree with the more space you can get them. It's pretty much like anything. Same thing with fish. Like if you put a goldfish in a little bowl, it's not gonna grow much. Put it in a lake, it can grow 10 pounds.
Well, and the difference between my pens when they were that size and yours is you have full coverage. And that's really important, I think. Whereas my design back then, I only had a roof over less than half. And so the other front half was open. And so I think that was a big difference maker.
Yeah, if they crowd a lot.
Yeah, they crowded under that shade, or they get rained on more easily, whereas your setup is better. So I'm sure
yeah,
it's more.
I think 75, it's okay. I still think we're pushing it. If it was up to me, I'd drop it down, but we need the numbers, so we haven't totally come to a compromise on with the numbers I think we should be running. But yeah, like this year was pretty good.
So to wrap it up, I don't want to put you guys on the spot too much here because this is a beef organization, but how about profitability on this enterprise? Is it one of the most profitable enterprises you have doing chickens, if you think about labor and infrastructure and stuff, and then what your return is?
I think it's good. I'd have to really look at the numbers. It's definitely the most labor intensive thing of anything. And I think by far, especially the way we do it when you have to pull so many different things and fill that many different waters and feeders and whatnot. The actual profitability, I think on average, we're paying $600-ish a ton of feed. And I'm sure I have it written down somewhere, and maybe Steve might have a better number of how many tons is required per, I don't know, like 500 birds. Like for us, we do 1,000. So I think numbers wise, the profitability is good. It depends on the labor situation. Our labor situation is pretty good because we have a state program that pays half the kids that work for us. So you don't always get the best labor with that, but we can actually pick and choose who we use, and we'll like recruit a kid to come work for us if we think they're good. So in that way, like our labor is cheap, but sometimes like there's 5 people out there doing it it kind of depends on who's working when. Sometimes it adds up. And like last night we loaded 1,000 chickens, and we can load 1,000 chickens in an hour and 15 minutes, and they're on the trailer and I'm leaving. But that's with 5 or 6 or maybe 4 or 5 high school kids and an adult or 2. And so labor wise, they're a loser. Everything else, I think they're pretty good.
So I think in each broiler, so first of all, to answer your question, each chicken eats approximately 12.5 pounds in the course of its lifetime. That's a broiler consumption, and you can spread that out. It might be tiny for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and then exceptional in the last one. They don't seem to move very far between the water and the feeder in those last weeks.
And that's assuming a daily move, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then they're also foraging. But a flock of 5,000 is 6,250 pounds, which is just over 3 tons. So we're for 500, we're making 3 tons of feed over the course of their lifetime, approximately. I think we have in each chicken about $9.50 is what I've kind of worked out. Between $9 and $9.50. Costs may have gone up a little bit in that regard, especially if, depending on processing and how we have it cut up. The profitability on them, our margins on each chicken is $6 to $8 per bird is what we're making profit wise. So if you figure a flock of, 500 times 8, that's $4,000. Now we're not finishing 500 when we start 500, but that's pretty good. I mean, and in 8 weeks, that's exceptional. The beautiful thing about chickens is the cash flow. If you can sell them quickly, the cash flow turnaround is really fast. So it helps pay a lot of the bills. But I mean, we put a lot of feed into animals and then put those birds into the freezer so that we can sell them all year. So we're not getting our return on them until, September, October, November, December, January, February. And then we start up again in March. So it's like putting an investment into the future in the next 6 months. But I like it. It's a definite enterprise that complements everything else. And one thing we've seen in our store is that when I'm out of ground beef or out of steaks, that's like the cardinal sin, right? And I just can't get it processed fast enough. And so when I'm out of that, I'll see my chicken sales drop. But when I'm out of chicken breasts, or for 3 months at the beginning of this year, we were out of a couple products chicken wise, even that chicken kielbasa, we see our beef numbers come down. But when we're stocked both fully, we see both of those numbers come way up. So it's like they're interdependent, both in the field and in the store, which is, I think, pretty cool.
I think as far as what you have to buy, and like as time goes on, you can upgrade to better equipment. Like Steve has like the best of the best as far as like the mobile coop. That's what you want to get. You can start with the smaller pens, and you can build your own, and they're relatively cheap. You can buy ones like I have, pay a little bit more. They're good, but like the actual cost involved in the startup is relatively low. You're not paying $30,000 for a corral that for cattle, or 20 miles of fence and Gallagher reels and water and troughs. Like there's a lot more like bigger expenses involved with cattle, but for chicken, you can kind of get done. You can get most of the way there with cheap things, and you can use cheap things for a while and then upgrade as time goes on. And it's still pretty much the same product. You just, maybe it's not as fun to raise them with those old Salton style pens made of wood, but it's the same product at the end, and you can make the same amount of money. It's so I think it's good entry level that anybody can really do, even if you have 2 acres or something, and you can make decent money. Like the margin is pretty good, especially like when you sell it yourself, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and then here in Ohio, we can process up to 1,000 of them and sell off the farm. Whereas in Pennsylvania, AJ, you can do 20,000 without any regulations. So if you're in Pennsylvania, you're crazy not to take advantage of that, And even in Ohio, 500 birds is a lot to process, and you could do that over the course of a summer and sell them to your church community or whatever, and make some decent money doing it.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you being honest and giving us those upfront numbers. I mean, that's great resources. Steve, you provide a lot of information about numbers and getting into it and how much they eat. And people can take all this information and really do their diligence and decide if it's something they want to do for sure. So I appreciate everyone being on here. A couple of housekeeping things. I'm trying to consolidate all of our webinars to one place. Right now, we have them on YouTube and under Red Devon, and then they're also under Red Devon webinars. So trying to get them all in the same place so we can share them and do that. It's a good resource everyone can go to, but we've been plugging away and doing this. I appreciate everyone's support, and there's a lot of good information out there now from our membership. It's really encouraging to see that. So I appreciate you guys adding to that tonight. Very valuable tonight.
Well, thanks for the invite. I'm excited to do this.
All right. Any closing remarks?
See you in
I think you guys
October.
wrapped it up pretty good.
Closing remark is see you in October at the national show. Look forward to eating
Yep.
some of AJ's beef. Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like I should have some chicken incorporated with it now, maybe.
Maybe
All
another
right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks. You have a great night. Appreciate it.
Hey,
Good night.
See you.
Yep.
AJ. Thanks for hosting.